From the laptop goes where? Don't. If you're online and can hear us, can you acknowledge? Yep. Okay, that's it. We got it. I think we're good.
I don't know
Thank
how
you.
to unraise my hand.
Okay. Should I take roll call?
We're going to do roll call again because we do have directors online and we want to make sure that they are here.
President Santianes? Here. Vice President Estrada?
Here.
Secretary Dockstader?
Here.
Treasurer Gutierrez? Director Plancarte? Director Kelly? Director Cardenas?
Good morning, President.
Director Perez?
Here.
Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you. So I'd like to thank the Riverside County Fire Station 41 and thank you, Daniel, Riverside County RCIT Division, and a thank you to Aaron at Conveyor Group. A great thank you to you all. Thank you. Okay. And now we will move on to public comments. This public comments time is reserved for comments on matters that are not action items or that are not on the agenda. You are invited to speak to any specific action item listed in the agenda at the time it is called. All other agenda items should be addressed at this time. Any member of the public may address the board relating to any matter within the authority's jurisdiction. Those present in this room who wish to speak, please fill out a request to speak form and give it to the board secretary. To comment via Zoom, use Zoom's raised hand feature or by phone, press *9 to be acknowledged. State your name for the record and please address the chairwoman. Remarks shall be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes. California law prohibits members of the board from taking action on matters on the agenda.
Thank you all for your patience online. We will get this figured out. Hopefully you can see the meeting in progress and can hear the activities taking place.
Okay, do we have any public comments at this time?
None online.
Okay. All right, so at this time, I am going.
Madam President, my apologies. We do have two members of the public who would like to speak.
Nathan White.
Okay, good morning, Mr. White.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman and members of the Salton Sea Authority Board. I appreciate the time to add a little bit of perspective and some of the work that we've been doing. My name is Nathan White. I'm a CEO and co-founder of Ages Inc. Just wanted to bring to the board's attention that we had a very successful binational collaboration meeting with members of federal agencies from Mexico 2 weeks ago. There is a request for follow-up meetings for coordination on hydrology, health, life safety, and some of the dust mitigation issues with our partners and friends in Mexico. Just wanted to send that invitation out to all the board members here. There's a potential to meet in a few weeks, and I can send that information to the board if you'd like to have a coordination, potentially maybe ask this body to potentially participate in an MOU with our neighbors to the south for coordination on hydrology, coordination on some of these dust mitigation issues. some of the dust that is originating here does go down south, and having their opinion, feedback, collaboration in this overall effort for the Salton Sea, I think formalized and initiated could be very helpful in directing different funding mechanisms, such as NAB Bank and other institutions through a binational collaboration. So I just wanted to send that invitation to any of the individual board members and potentially the Salton Sea Authority as a whole, and see if there's potential to add this onto next month's agenda or the following month's agenda for collaboration with Mexico. Thank you for your time. Appreciate everybody's hard work. Happy to answer any questions as well.
Christian Torres.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Torres.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, members of the Salton Sea Authority. My name is Christian Torres, Director of Climate Equity and Resilience at Comité Cívico del Valle, an environmental justice organization based out of Raleigh, California. I'd like to speak today about a very urgent priority, which is funding for the Salton Sea. Although the state faces a substantial budget deficit, the need to move forward with Salton Sea restoration and protect the nearby communities facing ongoing health impacts is greater than ever. Communities surrounding the Salton Sea, such as Nyland, Bombay Beach, North Shore, Mecca, and many others that you are aware of, face asthma and other respiratory ailments due to dust from exposed playa and agricultural operations. We are hopeful that the legislature and the governor will agree on a climate bond with funding for the Salton Sea, and that voters will approve the bond in the general election. And we are also hopeful that future lithium tax revenues will be used for Salton Sea restoration projects. However, both of those potential funding sources face significant uncertainty. We are proposing budget language that would defer the majority of general fund dollars until next year in hopes that these other funds will become available. Our language would ensure that critical Salton Sea funding is approved in this year's budget. It would authorize $65 million in fiscal year 24-25 budget from the general fund and defer $119 million defer $119 million to the fiscal year 25-26 budget. Under our proposal, if funds become available from a climate bond or the lithium tax, the deferred $119 million would be eliminated from the general fund. This proposal would support the legislature's efforts to close the budget deficit while protecting critical funding for the Salton Sea. Assemblymember Garcia has expressed interest in our budget proposal. If the Salton Sea Authority supports it, we believe our prospects for retaining Salton Sea funding in this year's budget will improve. We ask for your support. That will be on this call, as well as one of our partners who might be available. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Torres.
Nathan White.
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to put my hand down. I will say, and I'd like to reach out and support that effort as well. Thank you so much for bringing that to everybody's attention. I actually did have another topic that I wanted to bring forward. There is a hydrology grant for the Bureau of Reclamation that is due on May 21st. If there's potential, very similar to the previous gentleman's comment, for a letter of support for that application, we're trying to work with different tribal organizations to make a submittal to that. It'd be great if we had the Salton Sea Authority support to look at hydrology of the whole Colorado River Basin. If the Salton Sea Authority would like to be a co-applicant on that application, we're open to that as well. Or the other gentleman that just mentioned, I'd be happy to have a conversation with him as well. So thank you. Apologies. I'll put my hand down now.
We do have Miss Susan Kennedy, who has indicated a desire to speak. I know that she will be a speaker on item D on the agenda. I didn't know if she wanted to speak at that time or make a general public comment. And I see her hand coming down, so I think that means she's pumping the brakes. That's all we have, Madam President.
Okay, thank you. All right, so at this time, board member comments. This is a time set aside for members of the board to share their thoughts, concerns regarding general authority matters not on the agenda, ask questions of staff, and request that items be added to a future agenda. The Brown Act expressly prohibits lengthy board member discussions of matters not on the agenda. The board may, at its discretion by 4-5 vote, add items deemed to be an emergency to the agenda to engage in public discourse. So at this time, any board member comments?
I have no. Chair. None online.
Not at this time.
Okay, all right, so we will move on to the consent calendar.
Move on consent.
Okay, so
I second.
I have a motion by Director Perez, second by Director Dockstetter. And a motion, roll call?
President Santianes,
Yes.
Vice President Estrada,
Yes.
Secretary Dockstader,
Yes.
Treasurer Gutierrez, Director Plancarte, Director Kelly, Director Cardenas,
Yes.
Director Perez.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you. Okay, so we have the review and approve on the authority 2024-2025 budget.
Madam President, last month, we presented to this board the proposed operating budget for the Salton Sea Authority for the 2024-25 fiscal year. We received questions from the board. We allowed the member agencies an opportunity to discuss it with their staff in the interim, and we're bringing it back today for hopeful final consideration and approval, and the authorization to send out invoices for the member agencies for the 24-25 fiscal year pursuant to the budget. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Okay, do we have any director comments, discussion?
Just very quickly, Madam Chair, for our executive director, anything that we should be alarmed with? Any type of highlight, any concern that you may have?
The
Just
budget-
on the radar for the future?
I believe the budget, Mr. Director, is a conservative budget. Historically, we've anticipated more receipts from grant revenues and other sources. Because of the unpredictability of that, we did not incorporate that into our budget. We're hopeful that we can find other revenue streams that will fund other important work of the authority, but this will cover our baseline operations and achieve the goals that I think the board has established for us for the coming year.
I'm not sure if we had this conversation before already, Patrick, but
And make sure your mic is on. It is on.
it is on. Why press? There you go. I don't know if it's on now, but
Okay,
I'm not sure we had this conversation before, but obviously we are looking at a deficit coming our way and potentially can impact us in a negative. And do we have any thoughts of meeting up with Congressman Calvert? Have we had that conversation with him or anything scheduled for the future to have a discussion with him, potentially maybe highlighting a couple of needs where we could have him target and help us with the funding stream of source?
So I think I understand your question, and we have been working, especially through Ms. Moore in our DC effort, have been regularly in contact with our entire congressional delegation, including Congressman Calvert. He's from the conservative side of the aisle, so working with him is different than working with the Democrat side of the aisle. But we work together collaboratively with our entire delegation. I would invite Ms. Moore to speak on that more fully.
Sorry, hi. Yeah, so typically, so when we work with the delegation on funding issues, it is typically the case, or really always the case, that you sort of seek funding and sort of earmarks and things of that like with respect to projects, right? So if we were undertaking a particular project, it's usually in that context that congressionally directed spending requests are considered. So that's the usual frame. So I'd have to sort of understand a little bit more about what kind of what the concept is, but typically directed spending to an organization involves the organization's taking on some type of project or something along those lines. So for example, right now, we're working with the delegation to secure FY25 funds to advance the feasibility study, but that is really to cover the Corps of Engineers or ensure that the Corps of Engineers LA district has the funds to undertake that project with us. To the extent that we contribute to that work from a staffing perspective, we can, that counts toward like a local share, but it isn't funding that directly comes into the authority, for example. That's sort of the more typical congressional directed spending avenue.
Yeah, no, I can appreciate that. I'm just wondering, knowing that he's a ranking member and, thinking about potentially some sort of earmark, and depending on how the budget changes or doesn't moving forward, it's just something for our back pocket, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at. Thank you.
Sure, happy to talk, more about that with you offline, just to talk about how that all works and what your ideas are that we could advance.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes, I think Mr. O'Dowd did a great job just, outlining the budget, but I'm going to join Supervisor Perez on his comments. And I do appreciate us kind of taking a general approach to our congressional delegation, but I believe Supervisor Perez is onto something in regards to Congressman Calvert being one of the most senior appropriators on the House side. And maybe we can consider a federal legislative initiative that's laser focused, so we can ask him directly to be supportive of some of those funding asks. I know there was some public comment in regards to legislation, and that involves state legislation. However, I think we need a more, if I may choose this word, intimate relationship with Congressman Calvert, and have very specific asks. I mean, considering he's local, he's passionate about the Salton Sea, and being a senior appropriator, I think a laser focused strategy may be beneficial. But I do appreciate Supervisor Perez's comments and us probably pursuing a more specific and laser focused relationship. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Cardenas.
I have a general.
We do have one member of the public who wishes to make a comment.
Director Estrada has comment.
Yeah, I wanted to get a sense of and I think you've mentioned it before, and you just said it again about perhaps some of the issues that we're having with having anticipated revenues from the state. And I'm just wondering if you have like a sense of how much we've had to cut back because of that revenues coming into the Salton Sea Authority. So when you look at this year's revenues that we can no longer possibly anticipate, or is it what is it big?
I think if I ask the question in a different way, what are the opportunities if we can create funding vehicles that would allow us to accomplish other objectives? I think it would be significant. The reason,
So that's not.
I think I understand the
That's
question.
not my question. My question is if have you had to reduce the budget? Is the budget reduced from this year's budget because of?
We never had that revenue. It was never there. I think, when I first came on board 3 years ago, we were anticipating 5% recoveries from the Prop 68 grant.
Yeah.
Those types of returns for grant administration have never been there.
Sure. So I get that. I get that when you first came in, there was already baked in projections
Right.
that were probably not realistic. And then one of the first things you did was try to get a clearer sense of what was actually going to happen.
Right,
And a lot of adjustment happened back then.
right.
And so I'm trying to get a sense if you're in a similar position now, where perhaps since you've come on board and you've worked with the state to negotiate certain dollars. Specifically, I think there was some dollars that were appropriated for communication support or,
correct.
you know, things like that. Have we had to cut back on those, or are those in there?
So we did not fund that position in this budget. That is a continuing conversation. We have specifically requested an extension of that contract with the state. We have been informed that it is still in force through June, but we haven't received any guidance or direction as to what will happen to that after the June 30th comes and goes. I do know that within the state's budget, they do have a communications position funded or proposed for state employment. So, but as far as how we might address it internally, we are still having that conversation, and it's going to be important for a number of reasons. I believe that it's important work foundationally, but it's going to be even more important work as we move into the full implementation of the feasibility study that we work with our community stakeholders. As projects like the North Lake Pilot Demonstration Project unfolds, it's going to require more and more community engagement, more, and really how I've always described the position is not really is someone who can quarterback the resources of all of our member agencies in this space, right? Not someone who's a one-stop shop for communications, but can coordinate with the state and coordinate with the member agencies and coordinate with even the tribe and local stakeholders to make sure that there is alignment on all of these things. It'll never be perfect, and there'll always be propriety in everything that every member agency and every other stakeholder does. But to the extent that the authority, through this position, were it to be permanently established, can coordinate that, I think that it will achieve a more consistent message, a more believable message, and a more hopeful message. I think as long as everybody's out there saying their own thing, doing their own thing, it's going to be a mixed message. And you know, the MOU that you, as president, negotiated with the state reflected AD 71 that Assemblymember Perez negotiated, and the contract itself that we signed in 2022 was established on the principle that the Salton Sea Authority and its elected leaders should be the central local voice for things happening at the Salton Sea in coordination with the state. It doesn't work as effectively as we would like. We continue to strive to achieve that objective, but it's always going to be individuals and challenges and issues that we're just going to have to wrestle with and resolve.
Okay. Thank you. No, and I just bring that up because I was a big believer in that position also. I think that we could do more to try to glue all the moving parts together, and I did think that a person in that capacity could help us do that. And I do agree that there's going to be a lot of momentum. There's a lot of things happening, and so we do need to have our hands on all of it. And so I'm worried that it's not funded.
Well, I appreciate that more than you know, but as you also know, I've long believed that the member agencies contribute to the full for work that is largely the benefit of the state and their responsibility under the QSA, and now the federal government under the impact associated with the transfer. So while I left it out of the budget for operational purposes, I'm still committed to that requirement. I think it's really important. I just need to figure out how to fund it, and I'm hoping that our state and federal partners will work together with me, and maybe even some of our member agencies can create a framework that will allow those types of resources to be made available so that we can work more collaboratively to achieve these important goals.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you. Now for a public comment.
Nathan White.
Go ahead, Mr. White.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to reiterate kind of something that I mentioned before that I think kind of glues some of this conversation together. there is a hydrology grant for the Bureau of Reclamation to look at hydrology and ways to improve hydrology. We know that when the Salton Sea is full, it evaporates 1.2 million acre feet a year. If you're able, I would say the Salton Sea Authority, I have already reached out to the general manager of IID, which doesn't technically have the bandwidth right now to apply as a partner in that particular hydrology grant. But I think if the Salton Sea Authority took the lead with all of the member agencies in partnership, it could drive the conversation as to the necessity of restoration of the Salton Sea. If you're able to fill it back up and keep it full, that has a positive impact on the whole Colorado River Basin from carbon sequestration, which is a funding mechanism, but also for water creation, which is a funding mechanism. And then you can take a bill forward once that's proven through the Bureau of Reclamation with scientific studies that say, if you restore the Salton Sea, it'll have a positive impact. If you fallow the fields and let the Salton Sea dry, it will have a negative impact. And then you can take and create a bill, like was mentioned at the state or the federal level, to talk about water restoration and Western water restoration, not just Salton Sea restoration. And I talked with State Treasurer Ma, and she said that's going to fail. Anytime we take a bill to the voters in California that's for Salton Sea restoration, it's going to fail. But if we take a strategy that says we're going to restore the Western states water system and the Colorado River Basin restoration, then you have a winning strategy, right? So I think my perspective is, why not go for a grant that is with a federal agency that's part of this organization that could be a stakeholder. And if it's at the federal, they're also working with the Army Corps of Engineers. Why not bring a plan that does include water importation and restoration? Because that has a winning formula rather than dust mitigation and fallowing. And, when we do water conservation, it might have a negative impact on the whole system, but we need a scientific report that could really go there. I have two, and I'm talking to a third one this week about regional climate modeling and plotting this out. And it could show the positive or negative impacts of action, restoration, or inaction, and Salton Sea drying. Just my thought. It would be great to have that submittal. It's due May 21st. There's still time.
Thank you, Mr. White. Do we have any more public comment?
This time.
There's no additional public comment. I'd like to make a motion. 2024-2025 budget as presented.
Can you repeat the first part of your motion? You cut
Sorry.
out.
Sorry,
Director
I would like
Cardenas.
to make a motion to approve the 2024 Salton Sea Authority budget as presented.
Thank you. May I have a second? Okay, Director Perez, second. Motion to approve, Director Cardenas, the Salton Sea Authority 2024-2025 budget. And could I please have a roll call vote?
President Santianes,
Yes.
Vice President Estrada,
Yes.
Secretary Dockstader,
Aye.
Director Plancarte. He mentioned. Director Cardenas,
Yes.
Director Perez,
Yes.
motion passed.
Thank you. And now we move on to outreach and education, contract implementation and extension update.
I don't know if you caught
Thank
that.
you,
or not.
Madam.
It was yes for Plancarte.
Thank you, Madam President. I don't really need to spend a lot of time on this. We covered it in some detail in our last item. I did want to mention, though, that since June of last year, we have been working with Audubon and with the Salton Sea Action Committee in communication with the state, in collaboration with the state, in an effort to more fully implement our contract with the state, to put together a series of tours around the sea during the season. We met in June, in August, in September. We had planned an event in November that was canceled because of a celebration that took precedent appropriately. But since that time, I understand that there's been communications between the Salton Sea Action Committee and Audubon. And we learned last week that there is a trip being planned for next Thursday that is taking place. We weren't involved in the planning of that. But when I first heard, I mentioned that perhaps we could operationalize a portion of it under our contract. I reached out to Assistant Secretary Arthur to see if we could fund it. She's done some research on that. We didn't get a request from the Salton Sea Action Committee for funding for the bus. We did get a request for a $1,000 donation for the event for food, and food is specifically not allowed under our state contract. But it was a request to the authority by the Salton Sea Action Committee to help fund that event. And I just wanted to mention that to the board to see if there was any direction. But other than that, I think we covered this particular issue at some length in our last item.
Thank you.
What is this event exactly?
So I don't know. It may be an item. I don't know if we have a representative from the Salton Sea Action Committee on the call. They typically do present, and it is something that perhaps we could defer until that time and discuss it when we get to their presentation. But it's a bus tour, and not unlike many other bus tours that we've conducted. It's just open to the public. I believe invitations have gone out or are going out for the event.
I still don't understand what it's for.
It's for the community. It's just inviting members of the community to so this is the conversation that we have been having.
Just so you don't know.
Well,
Because
this
we
is the
don't know.
conversation that we've been having about, how we're going to strategically target these events, right? So my understanding is just to invite members of the public to see the work that's going on around the sea. I believe they're going to be given a tour of SCH. So it's open to the general public, and it's just a general knowledge. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? And as opposed to having our delegation from Sacramento and having them tour specific things. These are all things. They're not exclusive. They all need to happen together. And I'm thankful that the Salton Sea Action Committee is engaged and involved in that. It's difficult for me to react, especially with the very stringent terms of our contract with the state, to facilitate their request. And the result of that is my only other alternative is to use funds of the authority to provide a donation for that event. So I just wanted to make the board aware of that and see if there was any direction that you might want to provide.
Well, at this point, I'm not prepared to make any motion to support it. I still don't know what it's for. Other than for the community. It's not enough for me. So I like to, is there a one pager? Is there a letter? Is there something that, other than a phone call?
I did get an email from Mr. Delara. Like I said, I don't know if they're on the line and are willing to expound, but it said that they do have everything covered. They just wanted the support for the food and beverages.
But we
I
can't
think-
do that in gardens.
And we can't do that under our state contract. We could do it use our own resources to cover that. But my goal was to operationalize the state's contract to achieve those objectives. And I think we just need to continue to work to find a way to make those things happen in a consistent and effective way.
And so one more comment too, just if we do find out more, then I just would also want to know what line item on the budget, like how we would, where it's gonna come. Thank you.
How soon do they need to have an answer?
It is not in the budget. It is not in our 2023, 2024 budget.
Right. But you're gonna have to take it from somewhere. You're
I'd
gonna
have to take it from somewhere.
I just would like to know where it's coming from. That's all.
Right.
Thank you.
How soon do they need an answer, Patrick? How soon do they need an?
I actually think that the goal would be to make the trip
How
successful.
soon do they need to know?
I don't have any deadlines.
simple.
The trip is next Thursday, right?
Yeah,
My guess is if we reimburse them a month from now, they would be grateful.
Yeah.
Right? But but I don't have an answer to that. Like I said, I requested specificity with respect to the ask last week. I got it yesterday. I've been in constant communication with Assistant Secretary Arthur on this. I know that the state is heavily involved in trying to pull this together. I want to help make it a success, but it is kind of a, pardon the pun, a fire drill. And that doesn't mean that fire drills don't happen, right? When Assemblymember Garcia brings down 10 members of the assembly and we get 48 hours notice, we can react to that. But as it relates to this, I just don't, I have the information that I've shared and that's it.
Thank you. Do we have any more board member comments? Okay, so we'll move on to review and approve certain agreement necessary to effectuate Cadiz donation to the Salton Sea Authority.
Madam President, members of the board, in 2022, this organization received a gift from Cadiz of certain resources, and we are in the process of operationalizing that. And versus.
I'm here.
Okay. And so we have today, we have Susan Kennedy, who I believe her current title is CEO of Cadiz, who would be here with us today, but she had a little bit of a repair job yesterday.
Patrick, before we jump into that, and that way, whoever's going to present can hopefully try to answer some questions in their presentation.
I'm happy to, if that's me.
So
Yeah,
Susan's going to outline the request,
Sure.
and
I
they're all,
just-
and there is collateral material in your board package.
Yeah, it's the already executed.
The already executed agreement and the
Agreement.
joinder agreement is in there, and
Okay.
the joint powers authority agreement is.
So
is in
so
your
if
board
I
package.
could, whoever could provide the answer, if that's Susan,
Mhm.
that's fine. Is I'd like to know how if this has any does this involve CBLBD in any way, or is this completely
Okay.
separate?
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, thank you.
So did you understand the question,
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Susan and let her talk a little bit about what the ask is today, and then I'll invite the board to deliberate.
Great. Good morning, Madam Chair and Directors. I'm really pleased to be here. I'm sorry I can't be there in person. I did have a bum knee from a skiing accident that I had to have on yesterday. It sounds like I'm a better politician than I am a skier. But I'm happy to update you on the progress that we've made since the four-party agreement that was entered into in 2022. And that agreement dedicated 200,000 acre feet of water from the Cadiz project to the Salton Sea Authority, 3,500 acre feet a year dedicated to the authority, and 1,500 acre feet a year to the Torres Martinez tribe. At the end of it, I'm going to give you a couple of updates and then where we are. At the end of December, we received the first of 2 federal right-of-way permits for the Northern Pipeline from the U.S. Bureau of Land Management. That 30-inch pipe we required from El Paso Natural Gas several years ago, and it extends from Cadiz across Antelope Valley, crossing dozens of disadvantaged communities, the Mojave Water Agency, Antelope Valley, East Kern, and it goes all the way to the State Water Project. We're in discussions with a number of agencies around being able to exchange water, to be able to move water around. Obviously, wet water, physical water will stay in the Mojave as much as we can. Last year, the County of San Bernardino joined the Joint Powers Authority, which is Fenner Valley Water Authority. It's been in existence for more than a decade. And the San Bernardino joined to provide oversight of the groundwater monitoring plan and support project financing. And we also revised our agreement with San Bernardino County to ensure that as much water as possible serves disadvantaged communities, particularly in San Bernardino and Riverside County, and that obligation is baked into our MOU. Something I'm very proud of is we also finished installation of about 10 filtration systems through the company we purchased called ATEX Systems. And we've got about 10 filtration systems that we're finished constructing in the Coachella Valley, primarily on the Torres Martinez Reservation. We're also helping to restore safe drinking water at the Oasis Mobile Home Park and and at least one other mobile home park. With regard to water supply and storage and the physical infrastructure, we have signed contracts for 65% of the capacity of the Northern Pipeline. And there's 3 more in the wings that we expect to be completed in the near future. So we should have the full capacity of the Northern Pipeline under contract in a matter of weeks. So the issue before you today doesn't change anything about the agreement. The 4-party agreement included the Salton Sea Authority, Cadiz, Coachella Valley Water District, and the Torres Martinez Desert Quilla Indians. The authority was created in 2014 and will be the body that oversees design, construction, and most importantly, operation of the water project to make sure that it stays, and including the groundwater management plan, the oversight body for the groundwater management plan. So under the agreement that we signed with Salton Sea Authority and Torres Martinez, the Salton Sea Authority is entitled to be seated as an ex officio member of the Fenner Valley Board, same as the San Bernardino County. And we've also invited the Torres Martinez tribe to join as well, as it can only be public agencies or tribes that can be on the authority. As I said, San Bernardino County took a similar action in August of last year. Supervisor Dawn Rao and Supervisor Kurt Hagman as the alternate. They both serve on the board. And so we would very much welcome the Salton Seas Authority on this to join the Fenner board. You will be shielded as an ex officio member. You're shielded from any debts, any liabilities, any obligations of the authority, or any of the responsibilities and obligations that are borne by Cadiz. But it would put you in the same oversight role as San Bernardino County, and it's incredibly important that we have a broad range of the participants on the Valley Authority so that we can access as much federal grant money as possible for not just the infrastructure projects associated directly with our project, but we're also crossing and helping certain communities along the pipeline's path to install additional pipelines, additional treatment facilities at their location as well. So it's a pretty big project at this point. So the issue before you today is to approve joining the Fenner Valley Water Authority as an ex officio member. And we're moving it doesn't change anything, and there's no liabilities for the Salton Sea Authority. And I will leave it at that and take questions. Be happy to answer any questions, rather.
Madam Chair, if I may.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, the audio is really low. But I believe I heard Director Estrada. I did not hear Director Estrada's comment. Could I ask Director Estrada maybe repeat what his initial inquiry was?
Yes, Director Cardenas, my question was, if this in any way involved the Coachella Valley Water District, given that the 4-party agreement involves the Coachella Valley Water District, and so I was just wondering if this action required or needed some further action from CVWD. I think what I heard was that it doesn't. This is requesting that the Salton Sea Authority become an ex officio member of this JPA.
Mm-hmm.
And so my follow-up question to that was, does the agreement work without us becoming an ex officio member?
The agreement could work, but it will likely, because you're automatically going to be a member of the Fenner Gap Mutual Water Company because you're a recipient of the water. But on the JPA, that's the entity that is going to be communicating with the feds and attracting private and public capital for the infrastructure. And Riverside County in particular is very heavily impacted, and Coachella Valley is very heavily impacted. And so it may seriously impair our ability to raise funds, enough capital funds to build like the Southern Pipeline and other pipelines. But there's no obligation, there's no financial obligation to be serving as an ex officio member. It'll be the agencies that are paying for water that are actually funding the infrastructure. So for entities that are not paying for the infrastructure, your ability to, your presence on the Joint Powers Authority with the other county and the other agencies is critical to being able to access as much federal and state grant dollars as possible for the infrastructure, particularly from the feds, because the infrastructure funding needs to be committed by 2026. And the Colorado River Agreement is going to be renegotiated. So it would impair our ability to raise enough capital to reach into San Bernardino County.
Okay, thank you. And so if we were to move to become a member, a non-voting member, what are the commitments that come with that? Do we have to attend meetings? Who would attend meetings? Is it our executive director? Is it a member of this body? How often? What do we need to do after? Do we just sit back? And
Fenner Valley
and-
meets. Fenner Valley meets regularly, I think quarterly and possibly more than quarterly. And either the appointee could either be a member of the board, it could also be your executive director. And what the county does is they have, if Don Rao couldn't, if the appointed supervisor from the board cannot make it, then the alternate does. So that's the benefit of having an alternate, that you don't need to show up at every meeting. And they hold them virtually. I mean, they're in person, but they also hold them virtually as well.
In our board packet, we don't have the agreement, the Fenner Valley JPA agreement. Is that correct? I mean, to see the original agreement, to see how it's set up.
The board packet.
The original, not including us, but their original JPA
I
agreement.
believe the original and the 3 subsequent amendments are in the board packet.
maybe page 2022 is what I'm looking at. Director.
But this is, so there wasn't one before, this one includes the authority, but isn't that what we are here to talk about today?
The original, and Susan can probably explain it better than I say it's in there. There is a joinder agreement, and then there should be the I'm not seeing it.
There's an agreement, there's the underlying agreement. There is an addendum to the agreement that was adopted by San Bernardino County last year. And there was a addendum at the Fenner Gap and the Fenner Valley Water Authority to invite ex officio members to join the board. So those are the documents that included the joinder agreement that allows a public agency to, or the tribe to join the board. So that's, I don't know what's in your packet, but
Yeah.
there are 3.
I don't see it either.
It's not in there. It's on the website. It's on the
It doesn't take me to the correct link. I looked for that.
On our website?
The link that was on that was included, I think it was in our on our link on our agenda, took us to a different website. So I couldn't look at it. I just would like to see the original document before we vote.
Yeah, I agree.
Just because I didn't know anything about the Fenner.
Yeah,
Water
I don't
district.
know. I
That's
don't
all.
know anything about that water district. I don't know the makeup of it. I think I understand the intent.
Right.
But I think we need to understand this, why it was formed and what's the purpose of it and all those other questions. So yes.
I could answer some of those questions now, and I'm sure we can get you a copy of the original document. The private companies don't build water projects. So this was formed more than a dozen years ago by the public agencies that are engaged in the project, and there are numerous other water agencies that will end up joining the JPA. And the purpose of the JPA is oversight, management, and not, and nothing more. And then we will be, the agencies that are participating either at the Fenner Gap or at the, sitting on the authority, it just allows us to go out and raise federal funds through the Infrastructure Act for water resiliency. And that would include the pipelines, storage, and the distribution of water. And it's probably one of the bigger projects in the Inland Empire. So having access to some of those dollars before the federal dollars before they get committed, they're going fast. That's my only caution.
Kennedy, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, just, and I was talking to our general counsel at Imperial Irrigation District in terms of impact as well. And I do apologize in advance for maybe not putting it on his radar, just in regards to impact. And I know that we did pledge support initially for the project and for the benefits of it. But I don't believe in the original scope of the pledge was the membership request. Can you maybe tell me, Ms. Kennedy, why that request wasn't originally baked into the ask?
When you joined the agreement, the Fenner Valley still existed, and it was not. And there was always an assumption that water agencies, as they participate in the project, will, first of all, they become members of Fenner. But in order to receive water, you have to be part of Mojave, the Fenner Gap Mutual Water Company. But in order to access any of the funds to build the pipelines that will bring water, that has to be at a JPA level where the pipelines cross counties and cross agencies. So there was always an assumption that agencies would come in and join in the application process for federal funding for infrastructure.
And again, I'm not being critical of it. It just does allow us an opportunity to fully vet it. And I don't believe that the goalposts are being moved, but it's just an ask that that I personally did not anticipate.
I understand.
So, and if I may, Ms. Kennedy, in regards to just the time sensitivity of it, because I am going to potentially have to abstain because I don't know the full impact to the irrigation district. But I also want to get an understanding of how time sensitive it is. The last thing I want to do is disenfranchise a federally recognized tribe from an opportunity here. But can you tell me, I mean, would it be feasible if we did bring it back in May for action, or is this something that needs to take place today, in your opinion?
No, I don't. I think May is okay, but there are some grant opportunities and some permits that need to be filed, and so having the members of the JPA, especially since Riverside County is not represented on the JPA, and so it would be we can't go and approach any of the federal agencies around funding if we don't have the support of we only have support of the Northern Pipeline. The Southern Pipeline is the one that comes directly into Riverside County. So it's pretty imperative for us. Could it wait until May? Yes, there are grant applications due in May and June. And we're in the process of project financing as we speak. And we actually have a number of the new Green Bank on a national level. I don't know if you read about that, Coalition for Green Capital. They've got several $100 million earmarked for California. And I've been on the phone with them for a week because he's bugging me because their financing process is they needed to have us in the queue. So it would be I apologize that this is coming at you a little fast. It's really we're just operationalizing the very thing you joined into. There's no impacts on any of the member agencies. And it simply allows us to apply for and receive what I believe will be a large sum of money.
I think Director Estrada made some comments regarding our participation. Mr. O'Dowd, do you anticipate if we were successful in joining this JPA, do you anticipate participating in these meetings, and do you have bandwidth to deal or to actively participate in this new JPA, or can you give us an overview of how you're going to staff this initiative?
Yeah. I'm not anticipating this is going to be an awful lot of work or commitment. I think that it's more of an advisory role, but it's not a voting role. It's protecting our interest in it. I understand the board's concerns. I think they're fair, reasonable, responsible, and timely. I also understand why Cadiz is interested in putting this in place to help facilitate the financing and the success of the project. I do apologize. I did notice that the link on the website was wrong. We should have caught that. I should have caught that. I actually have corrected it. So the Fenner Gap JPA agreement is now on the website. But it would be my recommendation, given the many questions and the lack of clarity, and frankly, the error that staff that I made in not having the JPA on the website, it would be my recommendation that we bring this back for consideration next month.
And Madam Chair, or Madam, if I may, sorry, go ahead, Director Estrada, I apologize.
When you bring it back, sounds like we're gonna move to bring it back. We should think about how we could also benefit from having some of those dollars that the JPA is going to go after benefit our region, in the sense that I imagine that we're going to have to find a way to move the water, right? And whether it's to get the volume to the Torres Martinez or the volume to the Salton Sea, there's probably going to have to be some infrastructure improvements on the laterals, on the turnouts, things of that nature, that without that infrastructure improvement, we probably won't be able to move the water. And so those types of projects, I would hope that we could also incorporate into whatever applications the JPA is submitting for purposes of receiving dollars for infrastructure improvements. I think that we should be afforded the opportunity to try to put some of those that are needed to actually allow for the water to be used.
If I may, that's exactly what we're doing. That's a very astute question. That's exactly what we're doing off the Northern Pipeline with the cities of Barstow, Adelanto, Victor Valley Wastewater Authority. They need infrastructure, and we are applying for grants to connect the projects together under the concept of a One Water initiative. And it's attracting a lot of attention. I think there's a lot of funding out there for this. And we are absolutely planning multiple, we are going to handle the grant writing process and all the process. The Fenner Valley Board is simply an oversight board. That's where, and it's required under our MOU with the county for arm's length distance in overseeing the groundwater monitoring plan. But
and notwithstanding any reason to the contrary, I think that's likely one of the primary reasons why we would want to have part of the conversation as this effort moves forward. And I think that in that ex officio capacity, it would allow us to advocate for that type of component that would make our interest successful.
I do have a couple follow-up questions, if I may. One, maybe we also need to have legal counsel provide us some direction as far as the Salton Sea Authority. Maybe we could ask about that. And then for Susan, maybe when she comes back. So you mentioned the Northern Pipeline was at 65% capacity. Is that without this water?
Well, there's 2.5 million acre feet of water. 2 million of that we're expecting to be under contracts on both the Northern Pipeline and the Southern Pipeline. And we're almost at capacity at the Northern Pipeline. And we will then turn our attention to capacity, the remainder of the capacity. So when I went to the San Bernardino County Board of Supervisors to work with them on what they wanted the water, as much of the water to stay in San Bernardino County as possible. And we got them to carry over or grandfather the contracts that were done. And the fact that Salton Sea Authority had signed an actual agreement, it grandfathered water into the Coachella Valley.
Okay, so one more time, you said the Northern Pipeline is almost full or is full, but then earlier,
Well,
I want to say you said, what was it, 65% capacity?
Yes, we have 65% of the Northern Pipeline under capacity. there is a total of 50,000. So there's 2 pipelines and there's actually a 3rd pipeline where we have a number of pipelines across our property. So we are looking at additional pipeline as well. But it's 65% of the northern pipeline. Southern pipeline, I don't have contracted yet. I'm pretty sure I know exactly where it's going to go. But it is the water that would come to the Salton Sea Authority is protected under the MOU. But we need the pipelines to move it. Did that answer your question?
Sort of.
Ms. Kennedy, the southern pipeline doesn't exist?
We have a 99-year right-of-way along the Arizona-California Railroad. And so we'll be building it, and we actually have access to 200 miles of surplus pipe from another area at half the cost. So we'll be laying new pipeline along the Arizona-California Railroad track.
Which is at the end of that existing pipeline that you're gonna reuse? Is
We're
that-
looking at, yeah, some of it at least. It's a smaller
Yeah,
pipe.
but-
We want to build a
Yeah.
bigger pipe for storage because this is mainly a storage project. But it is, the southern pipeline is critical to be able to move in 2 directions.
A portion of that southern pipeline doesn't exist?
Southern pipeline, southern pipeline does not exist except for the right-of-way that has been, battle tested. And so we don't need any more approval to put it in the right-of-way. We've already
You
done
just
that.
need to get the funding and build it.
Yeah, we just need a crane. We're at the design phase. There's a number of overlapping permits that we're going to work on simultaneously while we're building the pipelines. And
Thank you.
we have access to potentially some strategic dollars to come in and begin. I want to get the project financed together in the next couple of months for the whole project. So that's the deadline we're under. Our goal is to have water flowing in 2026 and 2027. Which means we have to start soon. And we already have. We've already put in millions of dollars on the well field and power stations. And we have some very interesting negotiations right now with some entities that have very low cost capital and new power sources that might allow us to get off of fossil fuels altogether.
But until those pipelines are built, you still have access to that water to deliver to whatever contracts you have in place. Will that be?
The northern pipeline will come online first, and that needs pumping stations. The pipeline is already in the ground, needs pumping stations, offtake agreements, blowouts, and physical infrastructure. And we've already begun that process. So that's.
And where do you physically take delivery of the water?
The first drops off of water will be in Barstow near in the Mojave Water Agency area. And there are the physical wet water that will either go to Mojave Water Agency and then be exchanged, or it will go to Antelope Valley East Kern into one of their water storage banks, which will be exchanged for the folks for the up to 25,000 acre-foot capacity from the northern pipeline. And the southern pipeline, when that is built, and we're going to be overlapping these as much as possible so that we can bring the southern pipeline on as quickly as possible, is the 4-party agreement assumed that CVWD is open to making an exchange as long as it doesn't injure them in any way, and they're not responsible for carrying out the exchanges. And so we take on that obligation. But CVWD would be involved in exchanging water to get water to where it needs to be. Does that make sense?
Correct. I mean, but you don't have permits for the pipelines yet either, correct?
We have permits. We don't have all the permits. Every pump station is going to need a permit, and there's 2 or 3 other permits that are underway. And I do not anticipate. The hardest one was getting the first permit we got from the BLM. I mean, we went and met with them, and we're now working very cooperatively with the BLM. So I have no doubts about being able to get the permits, and we'll be doing it simultaneously. I don't need the permits until I put water in the pipe. That's 12 months after I start construction. The permit we did receive from the BLM allows us to move forward with development, which is what we're doing.
Madam Chair, if I may,
Yes, go ahead, Director Cardenas.
if there is no opposition from the members' agencies, I would like to see this item be brought back. I do appreciate Ms. Kennedy and her providing all the information that's been shared. And if just afford us an opportunity to vet it out with our general counsel, to ensure there's no just conflict regarding our membership agency, we can make an informed decision. But I do appreciate Ms. Kennedy, but hopeful that we can bring this back in May for action.
Sure, and I'd be happy to meet with anyone in the interim to talk through any of the questions, and I also hope then I can actually show up in person.
Thank you, Ms. Kennedy. Thank you, Director Cardenas. So I have a motion from Director Cardenas to table and bring back at May's Salton Sea Authority meeting. Do I have a second?
I second.
Okay, and we would be tabling and bringing back execution of the joint agreement and appoint ex officio director and ex officio alternate director for Fenner Valley Water Authority, correct?
That is my motion, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you. And Director Dockstader, second?
Yes.
I believe it was Supervisor Plancarte.
That is correct.
Okay, Plancarte.
What's the motion to approve or to bring back?
So table and bring back.
Bring back.
Roll call vote, please.
President Santianes,
Yes.
Vice President Estrada,
Yes.
Secretary Dockstader,
Yes.
Treasurer Gutierrez, Director Plancarte,
Plancarte, yes.
Director Cardenas,
Cardenas, yes.
Director Perez. Motion passed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, do we have any public comment on this specific action?
Not at this time.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll go ahead and move
You
on.
have one, I'm sorry. Jasmine Phillips, please.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Phillips.
She put her hand down, I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead and move on to legislative updates. AB 674 Padilla.
Madam President, under the legislative updates section, I noticed that Mr. Gonzalez is on the line. I know that he's right now juggling a hearing in the Senate on the Salton Sea Authority's bill. So I don't know if he's present and prepared to discuss this. There's a couple things that we wanted to update the board on. Our fire truck is returning. The first thing is last month we had talked about it. It should be SB 674, which is Senator Padilla's bill, which we talked about last month, and we deferred action on it. Senator Padilla represents this area. What this bill does is it creates it endeavors to create an early warning system for dust storms, a 3-day dust storm. His office has asked us to support it. It's tangentially related to our work here. It would be helpful to the communities around the sea to know in advance. And I just brought it back for the board's reconsideration and possible support. It would be my recommendation that the authority support this piece of legislation. I don't know if Mr. Gonzalez is online and is prepared to talk about it. I think he was there a second ago, but I don't see him now. He may have disappeared. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, at this time, how does the board wish to proceed?
Patrick, you know where the that their districts are on this item overall, and soon they'd be four. Don't know, but not. Yeah, or.
I think that the legislation itself works with the air districts and the university in the creation of this framework. So I think they're part of the effort.
In this case, the Southwood called it Magic District. And as well, Rio Valley.
Air pollution control district. Right.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea, but. Was wondering about that. Either here or there, I would go ahead and support it, hoping that their district's gonna support it as well.
Okay.
And I'll make. What is here, so.
Okay, so I have a motion from Director Perez to support the AB 674 bill. Do I have a second?
Second for discussion, Madam Chairwoman.
Okay, so I have a second from Director Cardenas.
If I may inquire, Mr. Patrick, we did struggle hearing, or at least I did, hearing Supervisor Perez's comments. Can you please summarize his comments, please?
He was first, he asked whether or not, and I don't mean to speak on his behalf, but he was asking whether or not the air boards were in support of this legislation. It's my understanding that this effort, it frankly can't go forward without their collaboration in the development of this program, because it's going to be informed by the work that they do. And so the answer was yes.
Okay, perfect.
So I made the motion to support.
I'll
Okay,
reaffirm my second.
Thank you. We have a roll call vote, please.
President Santianes,
Yes.
Vice President Estrada,
Yes.
Secretary Dockstader,
Aye.
Director Plancarte,
Plancarte, yes.
Director Cardenas,
Cardenas, yes.
Director Perez,
Yes.
motion pass.
Thank you. Now on to 2, budget.
We wanted to, there's it in your packet. Right. I know it's there. A copy of a letter that we submitted to Assemblymember Garcia requesting funding for the Desert Shores project. The Desert Shores project has not heretofore received any state funding. And Senator Ben Hueso, who's working with GAFCON, had suggested, based on his conversations with Assemblymember Garcia, that would be good to put a placeholder in and request certain dollars to help ensure the success of that project. So based on that, and based on consultation with Riverside County supervisors and coordinating with other stakeholders, we submitted requests for $1.5 million to be considered in the governor's budget. There's a copy of that letter in your packet, and I'm happy to answer any questions in that regard. And hearing none, I just wanted, I know that Christian from Comite made some comments earlier about the budget process and some concerns that they have. I tend to echo the concerns about the adequacy of funding for the Salton Sea Management Program from the state. Last year, they reduced our commitment by $119 million. This year's budget includes $65.1 million for administration, planning, and projects. Most of those projects will likely be mitigation, but we don't really have a breakdown of that. Their proposal was, and I don't know how it would be implemented, but I understand that they've had conversations with Assemblymember Garcia about some kind of a program that would reinstate the 119 that was taken away. Subject to the bond funding. There's great concern about the certainty of that bond funding. The 119 was taken out in expectation that there would be a fulsome funding in the bond for the Salton Sea, and I think that there's a lot of concern that because of the state's current fiscal position, that might not happen at a level that's adequate to sustain the program. And what Comite has suggested is something that would bring more money into the program. And if we got the bond funding, that money would be otherwise released. Not sure how it would be implemented or operationalized. I wish Horacio was here to help me in this conversation, but I did want to put that out there for the board to be aware of, to discuss as appropriate.
And if I may, Madam Chair,
Yes.
on this letter, there was a couple of, and I can only remember one, I apologize. I was doing this in the car yesterday on the way I was traveling. Where it says the source water began to degrade. I just have a couple of maybe clean up the language a little bit. Letter, because I don't think the source water degraded, because to me that means the Colorado River degraded. I understand there was less of it, which increased the salinity, but I think that sentence in particular, we need to change, please.
I appreciate that. I meant the source water to the sea, directly to the sea, which has declined, not the source water from the Colorado River. But I hear what you're saying.
Began to degrade. Yeah, I just think you need to clean up the language a little bit.
Okay.
Thank you, Director Dockstader.
We do have 2 public comments. Members of the public who would like to speak on this.
Jasmine Phillips.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Phillips.
Thank you. My name is Jasmine Phillips. I would like to comment on the Cadiz issue. I did have my hand up. I was not provided the option to unmute at that time, so I'd like to take this opportunity. In reviewing the 2022 letter of intent with Cadiz, and under section 4, and I'm addressing these comments specifically to the Salton Sea Authority, it says that the Salton Sea Authority can offer third parties of alternative beneficial uses or a turnback portion of the supplemental water of up to 3,500 acre feet a year. The Salton Sea Authority is leading the Salton Sea restoration. So I would like to ask, because the community needs to know how the Salton Sea and how the locals will be affected by this action. That's a question that I would like to ask today. It's something that I would also believe that the community needs addressed in the future. How is the Salton Sea Authority doing this as a benefit on behalf of the community? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Phillips.
We have Tom Septon.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Septon.
Okay, thank you for the unmute, and had a couple of observations on the desert shores. I do want to appreciate that both the Salton Sea Authority staff and that GAFCON did listen to the community in the March. They called it a charrette, but a community meeting, and did hear from the community that people, residents and property owners would like the project to focus on the central core issue, which is to return good water to the channels that are around the houses on the shore side of Desert Shores, and not focus on side issues like beautification, but get the channels filled with water, because that is the major loss that the community has suffered as a result of the water transfers from the QSA. The Salton Sea went down 11 feet and the channels were disconnected and the water is gone. And what's left is extremely salty and drying up quite quickly. 3 of the 5 channels are almost completely dry at this point. So please do focus on that. We are glad to see in the letter that there is a focus mostly on items needed to get the channels refilled with water. So we're generally supportive of that. As community members, we think that the project can be accomplished with less than the 2.75 million that you would have if this request gets approved. But nonetheless, we do support asking for more money, and if you don't need it all, great. And we have provided multiple quotations for well drilling, for geotechnical, for things that can be done by local contractors at substantially less cost than the agency is anticipating. That said, we're supportive of the letter and do note that there are a few corrections that need to be made in the letter. Thank you for your listening and appreciate your participation in the project.
Thank you, Mr. Septon.
That's all. I do know that Mr. Gonzalez was kicked off of Zoom, not by us, but nonetheless, and he is available on the phone. I don't know if he has any comments to add. Here. Take a look at me. I don't hear from him, so I guess that means no. Okay.
Okay, so a recommendation is to clean the language up in the letter.
Okay. The last thing we talked about the bond in this overall discussion, Madam President. I think that we have a discussion on legislative updates.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that,
I
please?
said I believe we're complete. We're finished with the legislative updates section.
Okay, all right, thank you. So we'll move on to project updates. North Lake Pilot Demonstration Project.
There's a lot going on, but not a lot to report right now, Madam President, members of the board. There's geotechnical work that's been underway. It's been enlightening, the information that we have found. The soils in this area are different than the soils in the SCH area, and frankly, even different than they are in the Desert Shores area. They're very sandy and very complex, technically complex, especially given the proximity to the San Andreas Fault. So the design team, DUDEC, is now working through a cost estimate of the project based on the new geotechnical data. There have been conversations taking place with the state and our other about how we move the project forward and how we can deliver the best project for this community based on the hydrology and the geotechnical conditions that exist. And we will be meeting again on that soon and have a meeting scheduled with Secretary Crowfoot to discuss both the project and the costs next month. And that's what I have to report on that. Happy to answer any questions.
I apologize. We're talking about North Lake. I'm trying to.
North Lake.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Yes. And in Desert Shores, we touched on briefly, well, not briefly, but specific to the request for funding. GAFCON has been working very closely with the community. It's a complex, just like everything around the sea, right? It's very complex, and trying to create a consistent paradigm that we can get things done more programmatically has been daunting for the state for a long time. And it's no surprise that even on the smaller projects, they tend to be more complex than you anticipate. But I think we've been able to make some great strides with that. Mr. Nahar gave a presentation last month. I don't really have a lot to update since the last time he presented, other than the diligence is continuing, conversations with the county is continuing. Concerns about site control are trying to be ironed out. We've learned that the Salton Community Services District owns a 50-foot bottom of most of the channels in the area, and that there are easements on the residential lots of 35 feet in each direction, which may be extremely helpful in addressing that site control aspect. But we hope to have more to report on that. Our final charrette or community meeting, as Mr. Sefton rightly calls it, will be held at the end of this month. And by then we should have something nearing a preliminary estimate for this project that we can discuss with the state on a continuing basis with our ask and also with Mr. Brooks and our friends at the Bureau to secure the funding necessary to deliver this project to the community and the region. Mr. Sefton has his hands raised if there is no question for the board.
Okay, do I have any board comments, questions? Go ahead, Mr. Septon.
Thank you again, and I just want to note that at the request of GAFCON, we are monitoring the loss of water rate in the water that is in the southernmost channel. Rainwater does enter that channel, so that's the one that still has 3+ feet of water in it, or actually, as of last measurement, just under 3 feet of water in it. And what we are finding so far is that the rate of water loss in that channel is consistent with evaporation loss alone, and there is not much indication of seepage loss. I'm doing those tests at the request of GAFCON on my time, at my expense. I do have a suggestion that we would want to look at what the seepage rate might be higher up in the soils of the channels when we do fill the channels with water. And there is an opportunity right now in a canyon, a mini canyon that was created by soil erosion loss caused by the last couple of years of rains, to put a very small, maybe 10-foot wide berm in the base of that mini canyon, fill it with water, and do a analysis of seepage loss all the way up to the level that we would want to fill the channels. And I would request authorization from the Salton Sea Authority to carry out that test, which would give us the very important information on whether or not the channels need to be lined. Because if they do need to be lined, it greatly increases the cost of the project. If the answer is no, that they do not need to be lined, then the project can be executed at relatively low cost, perhaps even with existing funds. Thank you for listening. And I would like a little feedback on that.
Thank you, Mr. Septon.
There are no other public comments. And on Bombay Beach, Madam President, that's a placeholder. We don't have anything to report. Although as it relates going back to the North Lake pilot demonstration project, one other issue that's part of the hydrology, it'll be part of the hydrology more broadly, and it's certainly going to be part of the hydrology at Bombay Beach is these emerging wetlands that are developing around the sea and how much water they use and how they might prioritize. So I'm looking forward when he's available for a representative of that project to provide an update on their direction. I know that they're pretty far along on their design, so hopefully in the next month or two we can get a presentation on that schedule.
Thank you.
That concludes the project updates.
Okay, now we will move on to reports. Federal.
Good afternoon or good morning. I wanted to just provide you an update on the Corps of Engineers feasibility study.
Lisa, you're breaking up.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes, it may be on our end.
Does it sound good? Okay. So Patrick was in town at the end of February. We had been working for some time through different legislative vehicles to remove a legal limitation on our ability to put additional funds into our feasibility study. Having a full feasibility study is important because a full study means we can seek more significant funding from the Corps of Engineers ultimately to implement the feasibility study. So we had been working through WRDA appropriations. We were successful in actually removing the limitation in the FY24 Energy and Water Appropriations Bill. Since then, we've been working with our delegation to formally get what's called an exception from the Army Corps of Engineers policy that says feasibility studies should be only $3 million and done in 3 years. So the directors, you should have seen and signed a letter to the Corps of Engineers formally asking for that exception. Patrick also sent a letter of his own with Department of Water Resources asking for that as well. So we are working through that process. We've been talking to our delegation about having their support to get the Army Corps of Engineers to provide that exception. We've had a lot of positive feedback from our delegation on that. Senator Padilla here, our federal senator, was meeting with the LA district and plan to advocate for that. We are also looking to be included in what is called the Corps of Engineers work plan for FY24 to cover some additional funds the Corps needs to continue working at a brisk clip on this study. And so we are working with the delegation on that as well. The next piece for the Corps of Engineers would be studies to seek FY25 appropriations to cover the additional funding that they will need to do that. And so we have put requests in for congressionally directed spending through the appropriations process for that. And so that process will play out over what is likely to be a long time during the course of the year. But those are the all of this activity is really needed to ensure that we can keep the feasibility study on track, make sure that it is robust and large enough to address really all the communities around the sea. A 3-year, $3 million study is not supported by the Corps of Engineers LA District or either of the 2 joint local sponsors, the Authority and CNRA or Department of Water Resources. So that has been our focus for the last several months. We're making some good progress.
We are making some good progress. That's the report.
Thank you. Okay, we have no report from the Bureau of Reclamation, so we'll move on to the state advocacy report. Horacio Gonzalez.
He is on the line.
I believe. Hopefully you can hear me this time.
Can see.
Good afternoon, directors. It's Horacio Gonzalez, and apologies for the technical difficulties. I'm actually in the budget subcommittee hearing that's going to be hearing the Salton Sea investment that the governor proposed, and that's really where I want to focus my comments. As I mentioned in the last report, and we're going to hear it again during today's hearing, there is considerable uncertainty regarding whether or not we're actually going to see the governor's investment go through. The Legislative Analyst's Office, which plays a pretty significant role in the development of the budget, came out pretty critically and actually suggested that the legislator only approved about $5 million of the proposed $65 million investment. Their argument being that the state's financial situation is very precarious. And frankly, there is just some general confusion of how we could go from shifting $119 million just last year to now investing 65. And those are just things that the administration is going to have to try to explain. And of course, I'm going to be here today kind of testifying in support and pushing strongly, but that's just an uncertainty that's out there. The administration continues to prioritize this investment, but just given where everything's at with the budget, it just creates considerable uncertainty. And it's just going to be something that, when the governor releases his May revise, ideally the investment is still there. We anticipate it will be there, but things are just moving so rapidly right now. It's just going to be something we're going to have to continue to monitor and just continue to lobby very, very hard on. With that, any questions or comments?
Do you have any questions or comments from the board?
Nope, go lobby.
I do have Nathan
We're
White
here.
who would like to.
Okay. All right, go ahead, Mr. White.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you for your support on that, and hopefully that will be successful. I wanted to just kind of mention to Lisa and yourself, I will go back to it. I think, submittal to the Bureau of Reclamation for hydrology and studying the local and regional and national hydrology of the consequences of Salton Sea declining and potential restoration is going to answer those questions and could solve a lot of those funding hurdles when you come to having a piece of documentation and scientific reporting that would show restoration is the only viable solution to water in the Southwest, as far as, you know, the impacts of inaction compared to the consequences and the opportunities for restoration. If it's a $30 to $70 billion issue of inaction, restoration, 1 billion to 10 billion, could create 30 to 70 billion dollars of surplus funds, right? So we have to look at that as a state that, you know, if we do the right thing and invest, it might be a 5% investment to the cost of inaction. But I would just ask, maybe the Army Corps of Engineers would be the applicant, or could be the applicant for hydrology submission to the Bureau of Reclamation using regional climate models. And I'd be happy to share that with you, Lisa, if your office would be interested. Federal to federal grant applications could be show us what happens one way or another, you know, and the benefits for Mexico, but the benefits for the whole basin could drive some of this funding, where it's not just us kind of trying to fix a dust issue on our own. It's us being able to be the opportunity to fix water for the whole Southwest, right?
Thank you, Mr. White. Okay, so we have number 2, State of California, Mr. Miguel Hernandez.
Okay, hi everybody. Good morning. My name is Miguel Hernandez. I'm the Public Affairs Officer with the California Natural Resources Agency for the Salton Management Program, and I have a brief update to share with you. First, I'd like to start with all the tours that we've been doing out at specifically at the SCH for the last couple of years. It's been a strong emphasis for us to share what's happening out there, how that investment is moving. Additional investment that just came through back in December that is helping us with the expansion of that project. So we have held multiple site tours with different partners at different governmental levels, local agencies. Hope some of you already had the opportunity to be out there. It's definitely a great project that you know, once you see it for the first time, you really expect for it to be there. But it's something that us as the Salton Management Program really want to highlight as part of our work and as part of the progress that's happening at the Salton Sea. So we will continue to do that to the extent possible. It's still an active construction site. It was mentioned earlier that we have an upcoming tour that the Salton Sea Action Committee is coordinating. We've been invited to participate and have been asked to tour the project site. Fortunately enough, that day does work for the working crew that's out there. Of course, there's always activity, but we just want to make sure that, you know, it's a safe day for everybody to be out there, you know, take some pictures and have a good time at the project site. So just wanted to share that with you. We will continue to do those type of tours. We actually at recent meetings, community meetings that we had in Mecca and Salton City, the community actually requested to have those type of tours. We have their contacts, so we will be reaching out likely you know, after the hot summer, so we can get them out there, especially for those that haven't seen them yet. And also with that, I'd like to share, you know, I guess you know, something that's coming down the pipeline. We're working on a educational video, particularly for SEH, sharing what the project is about. We have some really good drone footage. So I'll share that with you all once that's ready. Hoping to finalize that the coming weeks before our next set of community meetings. So those community meetings now shifting to that to this event happening early May, specifically May 8th, 9th, and 10th. We have our Salton Management Program annual report, community meetings. Now we have solid dates and venues. I think I've shared that in the during our last report. So May 8th, that's an in-person meeting at the Brawley High School. That's going to be during the evening, 5:30, 7:30. Then May 9th, that's going to be also in person at the Coachella Library. That's going to be also at 5:30 in person. And then we have a virtual option. That's more of a webinar type of meeting. It will contain the same information. Actually, all 3 meetings have the same information. The webinar will have just a different format, just because of the nature of the virtual option. but in nature, we'll have the same content. So we invite you all to participate. All those that are joining on Zoom, please save the date for these meetings. We'll have pretty much a good portion of the Salton Management Program team at those in-person meetings, and of course online we'll have a larger team. So yeah, save the date for those and hope to see you out there. And next update, of course, for us to continue to deliver on all these projects, not just SCH, but the broader scope of the SSMP, we need to grow our team. So I'm happy to share that through the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, we have acquired 2 new members, two members that are critical for the program. One of them, it's Susie Neal. She's the new senior environmental scientist specialist. She will be focusing on compliance with the integrated science team. And also Crystal Shore, also with CDFW. She's the new environmental scientist, also with the integrated science team, and she'll be focusing on biological monitoring. So, happy to share those news. And as we continue to build momentum to with the SSMP, happy to be here every month and share those updates with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we have Salton Sea State Recreation Area Update. Enrique Arroyo.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning, members of the board. I'm Enrique Arroyo, District Superintendent in charge of Salton Sea State Recreation Area, and I'm proud to present our newest state park interpreter, Cassandra Van Dyne, who is stationed there at the park.
Thank you. Yeah. I just want to share some visitation numbers with y'all that we've experienced this last month at the park. So for vehicle days, we've had 1,133 vehicles. Camping, we've booked 497 campsites. And then our visitor center attendance is 3,404 people. We've also had a number of group visits. So from the Desert Recreation District Tour, we did an informal presentation on Salton Sea history. Also with the Friends of the Desert Mountains, we had groups from Oasis Elementary as well as Saul Martinez Elementary. We've also partnered with the Imperial County Office of Probation and offered programs through their Aspire program in the communities of Heber, Nyland, and Westmoreland, in those communities as well as at the Salton Sea State Recreation Area. And then we've also been working with the Bombay Beach Arts and Culture to host programs at the Salton Sea. And I welcome any questions or comments, and I'm very happy to be here.
Whereabouts are you from?
Where am I from?
How'd you find us?
How do you find, so I grew up in San Diego, and I've been working with the Ocotillo Wells District for the past year, doing with the Natural Resources District. I did flat-tailed horn lizard surveys, and then also with interpretation.
All right.
Yes, I've been with state parks for about a year now.
Have you survived one of our summers?
Yes, yeah, I not only survived, but while doing the surveys, I was out in the field from 6 a.m. to about 11 a.m. just walking around looking for these lizards. And so not just surviving, but out there and feeling it 100%.
Well, if you can do that, you can do anything.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so we will go ahead and move on to local Salton Sea Action Committee. Alan Pace, SSAC President.
Thank you. Yes, we are working on a tour, which would be kind of the entire sea, starting at Fantasy Springs with a little presentation, and then moving on around to North Shore, the geothermal, lithium, SCH, and back up to Desert Shores and back to the Fantasy Springs. I'll get some information out to that as comes available. The other thing is the fourth biannual Salton Sea Summit put on by UCR and the Pacific Institute, among others, is scheduled October 18th and 19th. That is a Friday and Saturday, focusing on the cutting edge research related to some of the most pressing questions facing the Salton Sea region today. So stay tuned for that. As the agenda comes out, we'll forward that on as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we will move on to the executive director's report and comments.
Thank you,
Mr.
Madam
O'Dowd.
President. I think we're landing this plane, as my good friend Director Cardenas would say, right on time. I wanted to point out on your agenda, we have a new address for the Salton Sea Authority that we will be there in full force beginning the first of the month. It's 82500 Highway 111, Suite 4. And we have a new phone number for the Salton Sea Authority, which is on the agenda, and I won't read it. I also wanted to mention to you that we have for some months talked about human health and safety and mitigation and monitoring. I learned that Ms. Tina Shields will be at our board meeting next month, do a presentation of an annual work plan that IID puts together for the QSA, as I understand it, and we'll be providing that information to the board. That falls in line with a broader conversation of how we monitor and assess and impact and inform the public of these changes that are taking place. I had reached out, Michael Cohen was part of our conversation last month. I had reached out to him on the monitoring implementation plan. The Pacific Institute has a small blurb in there about work that they're doing in that space. And I had reached out to him for some more specificity on that. I wasn't able to secure it. I'm hopeful that I can get that information, but I think it would be useful to get a better understanding of the monitoring implementation plan now that it's fully operationalized and it has their first year report, to get an understanding of what resources within that plan inform this discussion with respect to human health and safety. And then finally, I wanted to touch on the feasibility study. Not this coming week, but the immediate week following, we will have some 40 representatives in town from the Corps and other stakeholders who, and I don't need that camera on the back of my head. So, and we, on the Corps and others who will be here to discuss a hydrologic study for the sea. It will involve, a comprehensive conversation about what the future resources for developing that long-range feasible project at the sea might look like. And I'm very excited about that. I think it's the missing link, if you will. The state did develop their long-range plan and delivered it December of a year ago, but it still has a lot of variability into it because of uncertainty regarding the hydrology. And because of the scope and scale of the projects that are going to be developed, that needs to be pretty clearly understood to secure the billions of dollars necessary to build those ecosystem restoration and other projects into the future. So it's a front end component, but I think it's really pivotal to the success of that project. We've been working hard both with the Corps and with our delegation to ensure the feasibility project stays on track and moves forward. And we have been making, I don't want to claim victory just yet, but collectively working with our partners at DWR and our friends at the USACE, USACE, I think that's what they say. We have really made some remarkable progress in solidifying this report. And where I think it's going to be most helpful is helping people understand what the future of the sea will look like. I think that lack of clarity has been problematic for years, if not decades, if not generations. If through this effort, though it might take 6 years, if through this effort we can paint a picture of what people can expect, and we can continue to collaborate to secure the funding to make sure that that vision is realized, then it'll all be worthwhile. But it's going to take diligence, and it's going to take work, and it's going to take collaboration and communication. And so, I appreciate the support that we've been given so far. That concludes my remarks.
Thank you.
Minute overdue.
Do we have any questions, comments from the board?
I would just like to say, I know you said it in the beginning, but thank you so much to host us in the new, well, it's kind of new, fire station here at North Shore. This is a beautiful facility. I had the fortune of going to the restroom earlier, so I took a little mini tour. It's beautiful. So when you drive by, just look over and thank you so much.
So thank you for that. I want to thank Riverside County, the Riverside County Fire Department for hosting us. They actually had a grand opening a few months ago. Supervisor Perez was there and they actually had Scottish bagpipes and everything coming through here. And they said, well, why don't you use it as a community facility? I think this has been a fabulous opportunity. And so we plan on taking advantage of this again.
More fire stations to come,
More bagpipes.
more bagpipes to come.
Well, thank you. And can I get a motion to adjourn?
I shall move.
And second,
Or second.
right. Have a motion and a second. Roll call. No, okay, all right.